There is a specific kind of silence that only exists between 3 and 4 a.m. It's heavy, industrial. Whether you're driving down an empty highway or sitting in a fluorescent lit office, that silence plays tricks on you. It makes you feel like you're the only person left on Earth, until you hear a noise that reminds you you're not. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 alleged true stories from people who worked the graveyard shift and encountered things that defied explanation. Sit back, turn off the lights, and let's get into it. The guest in room 412. My name is Marcus, and for about 3 years, I worked as a night auditor at a mid-range hotel just off the interstate in Ohio. If you know anything about being a night auditor, you know it's 90% boredom and 10% dealing with drunks. Or at least, that's what I thought. The hotel was shaped like a giant L. The front desk was at the corner, so I had a view of both hallways stretching out left and right. At night, we dimmed the lights, so the hallways turned into these long, shadowy tunnels. It was a Tuesday in November, dead of winter. The hotel was maybe 20% occupied. Most of the guests were truckers or weary travelers sleeping like the dead. Around 2:30 a.m., I was doing my audit reports, listening to a podcast, when the automatic glass doors at the front entrance slid open. I looked up, expecting a late check-in, but nobody walked in. The doors just stayed open, letting in a gust of freezing wind and snow. I waited a few seconds, figured it was a sensor glitch, and went to the panel to manually close them. As I sat back down, the phone on the desk rang. I jumped. It was the internal line. The caller ID said, room 412. Now, I knew for a fact room 412 was empty. It was on the 4th floor, which we had closed off for the winter to save on heating costs. Nobody was up there. I picked up, thinking maybe it was a system error. Front desk, this is Marcus. Static. Just heavy, rhythmic static. But underneath it, I could hear something. Wet. Like someone breathing with a chest full of fluid. Hello, I asked again. The line clicked dead. I checked the computer system. Room 412. Vacant. Dirty status. Clean. No keycards had been issued for that floor in weeks. I tried to shake it off. Old phone systems do weird things. But 10 minutes later, I heard the elevator ding. I was staring right at the elevator doors from the desk. They opened. Nobody was there. But then I saw the numbers above the elevator start to change. It was going up. 2, 3, 4. It stopped on the 4th floor. At this point, I had to do a perimeter check anyway. I grabbed the master key and the flashlight. I told myself it was probably a homeless person who slipped in when the doors malfunctioned earlier. That happens sometimes. I took the stairs to the 4th floor to catch them off guard. When I opened the stairwell door, the hallway was freezing. We really did have the heat off up there. It was dead silent. I walked down the hall, checking door handles. 408, 410. When I got to 412, the door was slightly ajar, just a crack. The safety latch had been engaged from the inside, preventing the door from closing fully. My heart started hammering. You can't engage the latch from the outside. Someone was in there. Hotel security, I called out. My voice sounded shaky. You need to vacate the room. No answer. I pushed the door. It hit the metal latch with a loud clack. Through the gap, I could see into the room. It was pitch black, except for the light from the hallway slicing in. And right there, standing in the middle of the room, was a pair of feet. Pale, bare feet, standing on the carpet. Sir, I said. The feet didn't move. but from the darkness above them, a voice whispered. It sounded exactly like my own voice. "Front desk, this is Marcus." I froze. It wasn't me speaking. It was a recording, or a perfect mimicry of what I had said on the phone 10 minutes ago. Then, the voice changed pitch, dropping 2 octaves lower, turning into a growl. "Front desk, front desk." I didn't wait to see the face. I turned and sprinted back to the stairwell. I ran all the way down to the lobby and locked myself in the back office. I called the cops immediately. When they arrived, 2 officers went up to the 4th floor. They came back down 20 minutes later, looking annoyed. "Room's empty, kid," one of them said. "Latch wasn't engaged. Door was locked tight. Dust everywhere. Nobody's been in there for months." I showed them the call log on the phone. It showed the call from 412. They shrugged it off as a technical glitch. But I know what I saw. I know the latch was on. I quit 2 weeks later. But the reason I quit wasn't just that night. It was because a few days later, I was checking the security footage from that night to validate my story. I found the footage of me walking down the 4th floor hallway. I saw myself walk up to room 412. I saw myself stop, but on the camera, the door to 412 never opened. It was closed the whole time. I was standing there in the hallway, talking to a closed door for 2 minutes straight. But the most terrifying part, while I was standing there talking to the door, the camera at the other end of the hallway captured something peeking out from the stairwell behind me. It was a tall, pale figure, and it was watching me the entire time. The server room. I work in IT infrastructure. A lot of people think IT is just resetting passwords, but my job involved maintaining physical servers for a large data firm in downtown Chicago. Sometimes we had to do maintenance during blackout windows, usually between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. on Sunday nights when network traffic was lowest. The building is a 40-story skyscraper. At night, it's a ghost town. Security sits in the lobby, but once you swipe your badge and go up to the 28th floor where the server farm is, you are completely alone. The server room itself is massive. It's freezing cold for the machines and incredibly loud. The hum of thousands of fans creates this white noise that drowns out everything else. I was there swapping out some faulty hard drives. It's mindless work. Pop the drive, replace it, wait for the green light. I had my noise-cancelling headphones on, listening to a playlist, just zoning out. Around 2 a.m., my music stopped. My phone battery had died. I took the headphones off. The roar of the servers hit me instantly. Whir! But underneath that roar, I heard a sharp metallic clang. It sounded like someone had dropped a tool on the raised floor tiles a few aisles over. I stood up. "Hello, Dave." I thought maybe the other tech, Dave, had come in early for his shift. No answer, just the fans. I walked to the end of my aisle and looked down the main corridor of the server room. The lights are motion activated, so the room is usually dark except for where you are walking. But way down at the other end of the room, about 50 yards away, a bank of lights flickered on. Click, click. Someone had triggered the sensor down there. I started walking toward it. "Dave, stop screwing around, man." As I walked, the lights in the aisle between us triggered. Click, click. Something was moving toward me. Invisible, but triggering the sensors. Click, click. The next bank of lights came on. I stopped. I was looking dead at the spot where the motion should be, but there was nothing there, just rows of blinking server lights. Then the sound started. It wasn't footsteps. It was the sound of fingernails dragging along the metal mesh of the server cabinets. Skrrrt. It was coming from the aisle to my immediate right. I slowly backed up, grabbing my heavy screwdriver. I'm a big guy, 6 feet 2 inches. I wasn't going to go down without a fight. I rounded the corner. Who's there? Empty. But one of the server cabinet doors was open. I walked over to close it. As I reached for the handle, I noticed something on the black metal surface. It was a handprint, but it wasn't a normal handprint. It was oily, and it was wrong. The fingers were too long, and there were 6 of them. The heat from the handprint was still fresh. The oil was smearing. At that exact moment, the lights directly above me went out. I didn't wait. I bolted. I ran for the main exit door. I swiped my badge. Beep. Access denied. My heart stopped. I swiped again. Access denied. The system was in lockdown. That only happens if there's a fire or a security breach triggered from the main console, which was inside the room with me. From the darkness behind me, I heard the dragging sound again. Skrrrt. It was getting faster. Rapid fire scratching on metal. I started kicking the door, screaming for security. I pulled out my dead phone. Useless. The scratching stopped right behind me. I could feel the air pressure change, like someone was standing inches from my neck. I squeezed my eyes shut and swung the screwdriver behind me in a blind panic. I hit nothing but air. Suddenly, the door buzzer sounded. Click. The door popped open. I fell out into the hallway, right at the feet of the night security guard. "Whoa, easy," he said, helping me up. "We got a tamper alert on the door. You okay?" I was hyperventilating, pointing back into the room. "There's someone in there. Lock it down." We checked the logs later. The access denied wasn't a system error. Someone had logged into the admin terminal inside the room while I was running to the door and manually revoked my badge access. The login used the credentials of an employee named admin_root. The problem? That account belonged to the lead architect who had died of a heart attack in that very server room 3 years prior. I requested a transfer to the day shift the next morning. I don't care about the pay cut. I'm never going back to the 28th floor at night. The dead end. I drove a tow truck for a living back in 2018. It's good money, but you meet the worst people on their worst days. One night, around 3:30 a.m., I got a dispatch call for a breakdown way out in the sticks. I'm talking rural Kentucky, miles from the nearest gas station. The note said, "Black sedan, overheating. Customer states they are alone." It took me 40 minutes to get there. The road was a narrow 2-lane strip winding through dense woods. Fog was rolling in. Visibility was maybe 20 feet. I finally saw the hazards blinking in the distance. I pulled up in front of the car, backed the truck into position, and hopped out. The car was a 90s model Honda, beat up. I walked up to the driver's side window. "Hey, I'm with AAA. You folks call for a tow?" The window was tinted dark. I couldn't see inside. I knocked on the glass. No answer. I shined my flashlight inside. The car was empty. No driver, no passengers. Keys were in the ignition, turned to the on position so the hazards would flash. But the engine was stone cold. I touched the hood. Ice cold. This car hadn't been driven in hours, but the hazards were flashing. which meant the battery should have been dead by now if the engine wasn't running. I looked around at the woods. Hello, anybody out here? Just silence and the buzzing of the cicadas. I radioed dispatch. Yeah, I'm at the location. Vehicle is abandoned. No driver. Dispatch crackled back. That's weird. The customer called us 10 minutes ago asking for an ETA. Said he was sitting in the car. Well, he ain't here now. I decided to hook it up anyway. If it's abandoned, we impound it. I went to the back of the truck to lower the winch. As I was messing with the chains, I heard a car door slam. I spun around. The driver's door of the Honda, the empty car, was now wide open. I froze. I had just checked that door. It was locked. Is someone there? I called out, grabbing a tire iron from my truck bed. Then I saw it. Footprints. Muddy footprints leading from the edge of the woods into the open car door. But they weren't shoe prints. They were bare feet. Huge. And they only had 3 toes. I felt every hair on my body stand up. I backed toward my truck cab. I'm leaving, I whispered to myself. As I reached for my truck door handle, the radio inside my cab, my CB radio, clicked on. But it wasn't dispatch. It was a voice coming through the static, a deep, guttural voice. He sees the tracks. He sees the tracks. I ripped the door open and jumped in. I didn't even bother raising the winch or unhooking the chains. Luckily, I hadn't attached them yet. I slammed the truck into drive and floored it. As I sped past the Honda, my headlights swept over the open driver's door. Crouched in the driver's seat, contorted into a ball, was a naked man. He was facing the back seat, his spine twisted at an impossible angle so he could look out the back window at me. His eyes reflected the light like a deer's eyes, bright yellow, and he was grinning, a grin that was too wide for a human face. I drove 80 miles an hour all the way back to town. I told my boss someone tried to rob me. I didn't mention the eyes or the feet. The next day, police went out to check the car. It was gone. No tire tracks, no sign it had ever been there. But dispatch checked the call logs. The number that called for the tow, it came from a payphone that had been disconnected and removed in 2005. Those were 3 stories that make you wonder what's really happening in the world while the rest of us are asleep. If you work the night shift, maybe keep the door locked tonight. And if you hear a noise in the back room, don't go check it out. Just turn up the music and pretend you didn't hear a thing.